All right, I want to pick up on the conversation where we left off when it came to using quads and flat shapes to properly describe EdgeFlow. So there are other tools that we can use to kind of help create EdgeFlow patterns within Maya. Another tool that can be useful within Maya's tool sets is the modeling toolkit. And right up here, if I click on this, assuming that your plugins were loaded in, and that would be a case of just checking your plugin manager and making sure that the modeling toolkit bundle is loaded for you. This modeling toolkit's been around for a couple of iterations of Maya, and it's starting to pull together some really useful tool sets. It's added the ability for you to be able to edit and work with multiple components at the same time. And there's a lot to the tool that you could really get into, but the one that I want to really spend the most time with using within the modeling toolkit is right down here, which is the QuadDraw tool. All right. And the QuadDraw tool allows a modeler to plan his edges in a way that is useful to getting good EdgeFlow patterns. Let me show you some of the basic functionality of the QuadDraw tool. If we use a QuadDraw tool, we can literally plot green dots following a pattern and then build a shape. And I'll show you the basic use of the tool. So we're going to go ahead here, and all I'm doing is, and unfortunately I can't snap to the curves when I'm using these green dots. It's the only one of the weaknesses I see in the tool sets, but maybe they will make that part of the tool sets. So these right now, these C shapes are just markers. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just going to go ahead and plot out a quad shape. I'm going to hold down Shift. I just put down 4 points, hold down Shift. Look at that. Now if I were to keep on adding to this, look what happens. Where I think I need my quads to be able to properly describe. Again, I'm learning from that letter C and how it sort of likes to flow the quads, but now we're getting this sort of twisting S shape. So I want to make sure that my quads are logically kind of changing a little bit as we start working our way around the curvature, so that the quads are responsive to the changing curvature as we go around the letter S. So right now I'm just going ahead and clicking these dots. Now if I hold down Shift, it will literally connect what's there. Now if I want to get my spacing, I can move points while I'm in this mode. I can kind of get these rearranged, you know, if there's anything that I'm not thrilled with in terms of the way the shaping is going. All right. If I also want to add an extra loop or an extra edge, if I hold down Control, I can do that. So let's say I want to add an extra one over here. Well, I hold down Control and the line shows up, and then I can just adjust the spacing over here to allow for more edges. And I like to use the discipline of working in one mode, where the amount of edges to properly describe the shape is showing up in one mode in a fairly clear way. Sometimes we get a little too clever with maybe taking out a lot of extra edges, or maybe what I call the shorthand in modeling, where you get some modelers who do this. And you know, again, I'm not going to fault them if they're experienced or seasoned modelers, but here's what happens when we don't usually have enough edges. You know, let me go over here, delete edge, you know, delete edge. While this is definitely expressing the letter S, sometimes artists will use this as a sort of the beginning part, and then they'll work their way around with the Insert Edge Loop tool. Now if you hold down the Insert Edge Loop tool in the new version of 2016, all right, there's a tab here called Insert with EdgeFlow. And this has actually been in Maya now for the last 2 or 3 iterations, but it's a nice little addition, because when you turn it on, or if you hold down the Shift key while you're working, I can definitely insert an edge loop, and notice how the curvature bumps out. Now I'm going to go to relative distance from edge, because that'll be a little bit more dividing it in half, but you can see it's actually kind of reading the curvature a little bit. So sometimes there might be a way to kind of leverage the tool sets so that you can start simple like we did before and then add the EdgeFlow later. Now, I would caution you that this tool isn't always going to be as precise as putting down the initial edges yourself the way we did here. But it's a way to work if you're looking to kind of maybe start simple and go faster and then maybe selectively add edges later. And that's just a basic use of the QuadDraw tool. There are other parts of the QuadDraw tool that allow you to freeform and draw quad shapes. So if I were to hold down caps lock and tab while I'm in QuadDraw, if I go, let's go back into QuadDraw and I go caps lock tab, notice a quad shape appears while I'm holding down the tool sets. All right, so what's great about this is that I can literally draw a stream of quads. Now we start getting into more organic forms. And if you notice, Maya's already talking to us here too. She says, look, this is how I like to kind of deal with quads with curvature. And just by knowing this, all right, you can use that to your advantage. And now if I want to close the loop, there you go. I just drew a complicated puzzle shape right there in Maya, just by holding down caps and tab. Okay. Now, if you have an earlier version of Maya, the instructions for how the QuadDraw tool works are a little differently. So you're going to have to reference the earlier versions of 2015 or 2014 that introduced the tools and their keystrokes are different. But for 2016, caps and tab pressed together give you that quad shape to start. Now, if you want to change how big or small that quad shape is, you can hold down caps and tab and then hold down the middle mouse button and then drag your mouse to make it a bigger or smaller quad. Now, one of the things that you have to be aware of when you're working with a QuadDraw, all right, is that when you're working, let's go to selection mode, let's get out of here and just use it as normal geometry, is that if you had something selected prior to that and you turn on the tool, Maya is just assuming that you're adding more quads to that particular shape. Even though they are distinctly detached, Maya looks at this as one piece of geometry. So if that's not what you wanted, but you like the form, one of the two things you're going to do is maybe you go over here, double click, and then you just say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and extract this as its own piece. And now it's its own form separate from this. So that's a little bit of QuadDraw and its functionality, and also how we're going to use QuadDraw to help us create EdgeFlow patterns that are going to be useful to us for more complicated shapes. For example, let's take our B and apply both methods maybe to kind of doing this. Actually, we'll just use QuadDraw to start. Maybe I'll start out with a primitive shape. Let's start out with a polyplane. And then I know that I'm going to need edges over here. And I know I'm going to need edges over here. Now, I also, from experience, know that if I want to bring this arch shape this way and then this arch shape this way, at the point where they meet, I may want to just have them funnel together. A lot of different ways to handle this transition. I like to use the one that's going to give me the best predictability for the shapes. So let's go ahead and, using QuadDraw, build the letter B. So now we have this shape. What we're going to do is we have it selected as an object. So you know what? I want to keep on adding to that. So let's go to our modeling toolset, add QuadDraw on. And now I'm just going to go ahead and define the letter B. Now you might get to a point where maybe it's a little wonky in places where maybe you're getting too close to the placement of a green dot. You can also move these green dots if you need to reassess the spacing. So let's say I'm kind of working and I'm not thrilled with what's happening here, and I anticipate that I might go ahead and move some of these guys so that I can get a better formation. As a matter of fact, I might need to add a point here. So let's go ahead here, and we'll go from there. So now I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm just going to go play connect the dots. And sometimes that'll happen, guys. Now, if you don't like that dot, you can hold down Control and Shift and just get rid of it. All right, and then Now, I can't just kind of put this guy here. If I try to connect these two, it's going to be harder to do. So what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to put a line here and a line here so that I can connect that quad shape there. All right. So there goes the top part of the B. Now let's go ahead and create green dots. So again, now because these points already exist, I just have to put them down for this side. And then I will, and again, you know, a lot of people like to kind of do this while they're working. Now I might do a little bit of correcting while I'm in QuadDraw. Maybe I'll move some points around. Maybe I'll get the spacing a little bit more even. Make sure that I'm hitting my silhouette. And here I'm also changing the spacing of this because I'm not thrilled with it. And you know, right up here I could use an extra edge. So I'm going to go ahead and add it, holding down Control, and then I'll just move this guy over here and then flow that point there and then just make the spacing a little bit better around this area. So there goes your flat letter B. So let's say I needed to dimensionalize this. I can go ahead and dimensionalize this. So I solved it flat and then extrude for depth and thickness. And there are a lot of workflows, a lot of planar positive shapes that you can do that fit within this category of workflow. One of the things that QuadDraw can be a little sensitive to is the direction of normals. So normally in 2016, two-sided lighting is unchecked because you can instantly and visually see which the direction of your normals. Now, the problem that you run into is that sometimes when you're working with QuadDraw, all right, let's say I were to go ahead and make an object live, like this one, and the normals are flipped as they are now. So if I were to select this and make it a live surface, now this object is live, and I started using QuadDraw, and I wanted to put points on, well, it's going to be very hard to do that because the normals are pointing the wrong way. So my suggestion is make sure your geometry, especially your 3D stuff, is facing the direction you need it to. Let me go ahead and reverse. Now I'll go make live. All right. And then let's use QuadDraw. And now look at that. Points are drawn. And the difference is now they're existing on the surface of a 3D model, which is also terrific because that means that I can work on a 3D model and actually make quad shapes along a 3D surface by making it live. And that becomes very, very useful in the topic of retopology. Okay, so I'm not going to get into it too much here. I might use it a little bit later in the demonstration. But for now, there goes your letter B. Now, if you needed to add holding edges to that letter B, again, you would go through the process of adding holding edges because right now it wouldn't hold up very well. If I hit the 3 key, yes, that's just collapsing. And so if I want that shape to be sharp, I want to make sure that I can go ahead and add the appropriate edges I need to get these shapes going. All right. A lot of people forget the corners. The corners also need 3 edges, 1, 2, 3. So you start with the main edge and then 1 and 2 to keep the shape. Now you might have to do a little cleanup in this area here because once we put the holding edges, there we go, you're going to start seeing a little bit of kink in the shape. And right over here, I want that part of the B to still remain smooth. So the cleanup move I do on that shape would be, well, I need the holding edges in this area, but I don't need them here because they're literally kinking out the shape just by the proximity of those edges. So what I do is I'm just going to go ahead and use my target weld tool, all right, and I'm just going to go ahead and just bring those together. So this is a good way, especially all over a flat shape. You can definitely get this shape to kind of do that. I'm going to go ahead here, there, and then I'll just go over here. Do the same thing over here. All right. So you're saying, well, why am I pinching those off? Well, I want to get rid of these edges. So now I'm going to go ahead and select this guy and this guy. And I'm going to use the shift right click, delete edge. There you go. To clean that up. Same thing over here. So again, this is a way of getting rid of unnecessary edges that are creating weird wonky kinks in your topology that are unwanted. And that's one of the tasks a modeler is going to have to get used to in terms of controlling your edges in the places where you need them and you don't need them.